today's video, we're going to be talking about the concept of hooks in chess, how they can be used to open up certain sides of the board, attack opponents, or even create weaknesses. Timestamps are in the description. Enjoy the video. Okay, so what are hooks in chess? So let's take a look at this position right here. This is a Sicilian defense dragon variation, and the game I am about to show you was played between Viswanathan Anand with the white pieces against Magnus Carlsen with black. And in this position, as we know, both sides want to attack each other because it's opposite side castling. Black wants to pawn storm on the queen side, white wants to pawn storm on the king side. But how do you actually attack here with the white pieces? Well, you need to use this g-pawn as a hook. So let me continue this game. Knight to e5, king to b1, a6, Magnus Carlsen getting ready to attack over here, h4 played by Anand. Now, if Magnus had played a move like b5, Anand here would have played h5, sacrificing this pawn. Now, the idea here is that you want to take, so in this case, you are using this g-pawn as a hook in order to open up the rook. And that's what a hook is in chess. A hook is something, a pawn specifically, that you can use in order to open up a side of the board. Now, in a situation like this, you would be able to go h takes g6, bishop h6, and so on. Even taking here doesn't help black because of various ideas with bishop to h6, g4, and this is a very nice position for the white pieces. Now, going back, this is not actually what happened in the game because Magnus Carlsen did not play b5. Instead, he played h5 himself in order to stop h5 by white. However, here Anand used this pawn, this h pawn, as a hook, and he went g4. As you can see, any of these pawns can be used as hooks in the right context to open up this side of the board so you can attack with the white pieces. Here h takes g4 was played by Carlsen, and now Anand once again demonstrates the idea and the concept of hooks by playing this move h5, continuing to attack, once again using this g-pawn as a hook in order to open up the rook. Everything here is about attacking black. Everything here is about opening up this side of the board. So what I want you to recognize is that in positions like these, you can use these pawns in front of the king as hooks in order to open up the position. Now, I'm not going to show you the entire game here because it is pretty long. However, Anand went on to defeat Magnus in this position spectacularly. Here, rook takes c3 was played, and after bishop takes g7, king takes g7, rook takes h5, another rook sacrifice trying to open the position up. And after a couple of moves here, Magnus sacrificed his queen. Queen was taken. It was a mistake because of rook takes b2. Rook cannot be taken because of knight c4. You would lose the queen. You don't want to do that. So Anand played king to a1, and of course, he's up a queen. He's a former world champion, one of the best players of all time, so he went on to convert this game. Okay, we just talked about how to use g-pawn as a hook, but can we use the h-pawn as a hook as well? And of course we can. In this position, what we need to do is get both of our pawns up the board, and in this case, white plays g4. Let's say knight to b6 is played, we go f4 as the white pieces. Now in this position, g5 is coming, and there's not much you can do with the black pieces to stop it. c5, let's say knight back to f3, but eventually white will go g5 and use this h-pawn as a hook in order to open up the king side one more time. So the concept of hooks is very important. It's relevant in every single opposite side castling situation, and even a lot more situations than that. But the idea is to open up this side of the board, open up either the G file or something else. Pretty much in this case, it is the G file. In the previous case, it was the H file. So here after H takes G6, what do we want to take with? Do we want to take with the pawn or do we want to take with the knight? Well, of course, we do not want to close down the g-file, even though the position is so strong in this case that even this capture is completely winning for white. White is still really enjoying this game right here. We should really take this with the knight though. We shouldn't close the g-file, and now we have successfully used this h-pawn as a hook in order to open up the g-file, and of course from here the attack is going to continue. Queen to f2, transferring the queen over here, queen to h4, even using this square on h7 to attack black. We would go e5 here to remove the defender. For example, bishop goes back to b5, we can easily go e5, a simple remove the defender tactic. The pawn cannot take because the queen would be hanging. If the knight moves away, of course this is checkmate. So we didn't even use the g-file, but we still ended up using the h-file, and this is just a very powerful attack for white, which cannot be stopped. One of the easiest types of hooks to use is this h6 g5 type of hook. So now we can use this g-pawn as a hook in order to try to open up either the h-file or the g-file. So in a position like this, we would play a move like h4. What h4 aims to do is to capture on g5 and open up this rook. Now, of course, black cannot allow that. That would be devastating. So black actually plays g4. However, once again, we can use this pawn as a hook one more time. We can play this move f3. Now here h5 does not really work because we have e4, we have queen g5, and we have a huge attack, and we're just getting in with the white pieces. g3 does not work either because we have rook h3, and who's gonna guard this pawn on g3? Even knight h5 is a little bit shaky because queen d5 attacks the knight, and you cannot play f5 because the pawn is pinned, as you can see. So in a position like this, you would not be able to defend this pawn on g3, you would simply lose it. So you are forced to make this decision. G takes f3, G takes f3, and from here we have successfully used the G pawn as a hook in order to open up the G file, and from here our attack can continue. The concept of hooks does not only have to be used to attack the king, it can actually be used to gain some positional advantage as well. So in this position, we can use these pawns as hooks, a6 and b5. Earlier, we used h6 and g5, we played h4. Now we are going to use these pawns and we're going to play this move a4. Right now it's black to move. Let's say black plays this move bishop to e6, which is not entirely a good move because after bishop takes e6, f takes e6, now we play this move a4. And the problem for black pieces is that you cannot allow white to take because then you would lose material. If you try to defend the rook, then you weaken this pawn, so knight to g5 would be very, very strong. So you cannot just simply move the knight away. And also you cannot push the pawn because then you would be losing this pawn either by capturing, or even queen b3 works here because queen takes e6 would come with the tempo. And capturing on a4 also leads to a bad position because after queen takes a4, this pawn will forever be a weakness. Now this position is not winning right away, but it is certainly better for the white pieces, and white can build up his advantage from here. So the concept of hooks does not only apply to attacking the king and trying to open up the king side, but it can have a positional idea behind it as well, or even trying to win material. The idea of using a6 b5 as a hook happens in multiple openings. For example, in this case, we have an example of a Maran Semislav where we can play this move a4 and we can use this as a hook. And from here, this is still a theoretical variation. There are plenty of games in the database from this position. The theory goes something like b4, knight to e4, and then from here bishop to b7. I'm not going to get into too many details, but the idea of using this pawn as a hook is still there. And what this move accomplishes, this a4 b4 maneuver, what this accomplishes is that it weakens this square on c4. So in the future, this square will be up for grabs for white with maneuvers like knight to d2, knight c4, or even b3, bishop b2, and this bishop will occupy the c4 square in the future, provided the knight is not hanging, and the game continues from here. Let me show you one final example of how to use hooks in order to weaken certain squares. So in a position like this, white has played h3 and g4, and what we can do is, of course, use these two pawns as a hook once again, we can play this move h5. Now, h5 has a direct threat in mind. You want to take on g4 and open up this rook right here. And this is actually the best way to continue. You do not want to push this pawn to g5, because if you push this pawn to g5, now you weaken this f5 square. Knight jumps on f5, and you're in a lot of trouble because this pawn is going to be very, very loose. It's going to be attacked even further, and this is going to be very uncomfortable for the white pieces. However, if you actually allow this capture, now you could be inviting a potential attack. It's still quite difficult to attack here with the black pieces. For example, if bishop to e3, hg4, hg4, this is not an easy position to handle because it's hard to generate an attack here. However, it is possible if you play bishop to e4 and moves like this, because let's say a move like knight to c5 is played, you can even capture on f3, then you can go knight to g6, queen to h4, and if white is not careful, then he's gonna get attacked. If queen h4 lands on the board, this is going to be over for the white pieces because of queen h2 mate.